So Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister in 1971, and Honorable Prime Minister, India got invitation to attend UN Conference on Human Environment. So this was the first World Conference on Human Environment in Stockholm. And 1972 में conference थी, and पहली बार environmental issues were being discussed actually at the global level. So when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi visited and attended the conference, which was held in Stockholm in 1972, she was the only Prime Minister from outside the host country to participate in that conference. So पूरे वर्ल्ड की जितनी भी कंट्रीज हैं, उन्होंने एनवायरमेंट कॉन्फ्रेंस को या एनवायरमेंट इशू को इतना इंपॉर्टेंट कभी समझा ही नहीं. 1972 की बात कर रहा हूँ. एंड दे उनके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स विजिटेड द कॉन्फ्रेंस, बट इंडिया का प्राइम मिनिस्टर विजिटेड द कॉन्फ्रेंस, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस इंडियाज एनवायरमेंटल डिप्लोमेसी स्टार्टेड. हर स्पीच was the landmark speech. वो आप कभी भी यूट्यूब में डालेंगे, it is exactly 50 years actually, last पिछले 50 साल, exactly half century होगी उस speech को. But that speech is the bedrock of environmental law, not for only India, for the world actually. And once she came back from that environment conference, and 1971 we had India-Pakistan war, and we won that war. Bangladesh was carved out, and it was a success story for Prime Minister Indira Gandhi also, success story for India also. Similarly, privy purse was abolished. So दो उनके जो इंपॉर्टेंट इश्यूज थे, प्राइम मिनिस्टर को जो चैलेंज करने वाले इश्यूज थे, एक तो जितने भी किंगडम्स थे इंडिया में पुराने, they were getting a privy purse from the government of India because they merged their respective states to Indian Union. So government of India to the former kings was paying certain amount to sustain them. This was privy purse. They also had certain liberties actually. So they were called Raj Pramukhs. All right, and they had respect as a governor of the state. Though they were not governor of the state, but they had that kind of respect. So this was one challenge. Second is that पाकिस्तान का इशू चल ही रहा था, बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान. So Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1971, around 71, abolished privy purse. So everybody became equal. There was no distinction between the king and the common person. She also, took India forward, and India won the 1971 war. उसके बाद immediately 1972 में conference थी, UN Conference on Human Environment in Stockholm, and with full confidence he visited Stockholm, and her speech was a landmark speech. And when she came back, inspired from the conference, the journey of environmental law started. So environment, India की constitution में environment दूर दूर तक नहीं था. It was not there in the constitution of India. There was something which is called forest. Forest was a state subject. जैसे agriculture is a state subject, land is a state subject. Similarly, forest was the state subject, and it was the individual responsibility and duties of respective states to take action with respect to, you can say protection of forest or use of forest. Once she came back from Stockholm, massive reforms were made in environmental laws. So सबसे पहले उन्होंने वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट बनाया. आई विल टेल यू व्हाई इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट टू पावर सेक्टर, बिकॉज इट हैज इंपैक्टेड द पावर सेक्टर ह्यूजली. सो वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट बनाया. उसके बाद वाटर प्रिवेंशन एंड कंट्रोल ऑफ पॉल्यूशन एक्ट 1974 में वाज एनेक्टेड बाय द पार्लियामेंट. देन द वाटर प्रिवेंशन एंड कंट्रोल ऑफ पॉल्यूशन सेस एक्ट वाज enacted by the Parliament of India in 1977. Then the Forest Act, it was a continuation. So let us keep it to 1977. Up there. Similarly, it was found that the Constitution of India does not have provision, and there is no adequate law in India with respect to environment. So 1976 constitutional, it is a mini constitutional amendment. 42nd constitutional amendment was introduced in the parliament, and it was passed because massive majority was available with the prime minister. And first time, number one. So from state subject, the forest was shifted to concurrent subject. That means after the 42nd amendment, after 1976, now the forest, now environment, now protection of wild animal and birds was not a state subject. It was a concurrent subject where central government and state government both can make laws. Article 48A was introduced in the constitution, which provided for protection for improvement of environment and safeguarding of forest and wildlife. Similarly, a fundamental duty was also inserted. So fundamental duty was inserted under Article 51A, which in clause G says that it is the duty of every citizen to protect and improve the natural environment. In fact, ये सिचुएशन आ गई थी इंडिया के एनवायरमेंटल डिप्लोमेसी में, एंड जिस तरह से प्राइम मिनिस्टर इंदिरा गांधी डिड एनवायरमेंटल डिप्लोमेसी, सिमिलरली नाउ प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी इज डूइंग एनर्जी डिप्लोमेसी. इट इज अ शिफ्ट एक्चुअली. ओके, अब जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर इंदिरा गांधी के टाइम पे, बिकॉज इंडिया वाज वेरी फार अहेड इन एनवायरमेंटल डिप्लोमेसी. इनफैक्ट अभी आप जो गिर के लायंस देखते हो, या यू सी लॉट ऑफ टाइगर्स इन इंडियन फॉरेस्ट, इट इज बिकॉज ऑफ द पॉलिसीज मेड एट दैट टाइम. सो 1972 में Project Lion was started, where Asiatic lions were preserved in Gir forest. Then Project Tiger was started 1973 में, where all the tigers across India were protected. फिर Wildlife Protection Act बन गया और ये सिस्टम चालू हो गया. In fact, environmental diplomacy was so high of India that India proposed कि एक United Nations Environment Program होना चाहिए, UNEP, and UNEP का headquarters India होना चाहिए. And throughout the world, this suggestion of India was accepted. And then it was decided that the United Nations Environment Program, जो नया प्रोग्राम है UN का, उसका हेडक्वार्टर साउथ जो ग्लोबल साउथ बोलते हैं, डेवलपिंग कंट्री में होगा. बट देन देयर आर 2 कंट्रीज व्हिच वांटेड टू हैव द हेडक्वार्टर्स ऑफ यूनाइटेड नेशंस एनवायरमेंटल प्रोग्राम, यूएनईपी. और वो 2 कंट्रीज थी, केन्या एंड इंडिया. इंडिया में because there was some issue with respect to allocation of land, and Kenya was a very good friend of India, so India उस रेस से India came out and said that let us have the headquarters in Kenya. That is why we have now UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program का head office in Nairobi, Kenya. So this is a small history which this is how environmental law, अब issue ये होता है कि dispute, because we are discussing dispute resolution. So dispute resolution में within electricity we have 5 dispute resolution mechanisms which we will discuss at the later stage. Without Electricity Act के बाहर we have 6 dispute resolution mechanism. So we discussed कि DRC, Dispute Resolution Committee, क्या करती है last time. We also discussed Competition Commission of India का क्या role है power sector में. We also to some extent discussed कि अगर revenue, अगर private land acquisition है, in that case revenue laws or of respective state land revenue codes will be applicable. So if private land acquisition, if some solar company goes and decides to acquire land for solar project, so land laws and agriculture laws are made by the state government. State government has a revenue hierarchy. Revenue hierarchy में we have Tehsildar, Deputy Collector, Collector, Commissioner, and Board of Revenue. And then you have to, if there is a dispute with respect to private land acquisition, this is the hierarchy which will be followed. However, the counter question may come, sir, if there is a government land acquisition, then what will be the hierarchy? So government land acquisition की hierarchy में first stage is collector, second stage is authority. Authority is Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Authority. The revision appeal goes to the authority, and directly from the authority it goes to the High Court. So government land acquisition में first is collector, second is land authority, and third is the High Court. Private में revenue courts है, but together we call it revenue courts because senior officers, PCS officers, government officers, and IS officers man these courts. So land acquisition का, so हमारा land acquisition का भी वो clear हो गया था. High Court का भी हमने डिस्कस किया था कि if you want to challenge a regulation of the State Electricity Regulatory Commission or Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, then you go directly to the High Court. If you're not challenging the regulations, so for example, you have a distribution company has filed the annual revenue requirement, tariff has been determined by State Electricity Regulatory Commission, but this tariff order has to be challenged. Then you go to Appellate Tribunal of Electricity, वो Electricity Act के अंदर में आता है. We also discussed the role of Interstate Water Tribunal. So how what disputes will be resolved in case of interstate water tribunals. However, आज का क्वेश्चन जो था वो था नेशनल ग्रीन ट्राइब्यूनल के बारे में एंड एनवायरमेंटल लॉ के बारे में. So initially we discussed कि how India was in forefront in development of environmental law not only in India, across the world actually. And in fact, it is because of the initiative of India that international organization, United Nations Environmental Program, was established in 1978 in Nairobi. It was proposed to be established in Delhi, but then because of global situation and a lot of other, the Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi also lost power in India and a lot of things happened. So this office shifted to Nairobi. All right. अब क्वेश्चन ये है कि सर आप ये बता दीजिए कि नेशनल ग्रीन ट्राइब्यूनल में कौन से मैटर्स जाएंगे, एनजीटी. सो इफ देयर इज एनी मैटर विद रिस्पेक्ट टू 7 एक्ट्स, if any dispute is regarding with power sector with respect to 7 Act, it goes to National Green Tribunal. First is Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. So if second is Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Cess Act. So if there is pollution of water related issue, you go to National Green Tribunal, number 1. Number 2, if there is an issue with respect to Forest Conservation Act 1980. So अगर forest use change करा गया है किसी thermal power plant को establish करने के लिए, it has been converted to non-forest use, and if somebody has an issue with respect to that, whatever state government has decided you want to challenge it, that challenge will lie to the National Green Tribunal. Third, if there is an issue with respect to Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, then it goes to National Green Tribunal. Next, if there is a challenge with respect to the Environment Protection Act, so environment impact assessment हुआ है, उसमें कोई issue है, then it goes to National Green Tribunal. उसके बाद, if there is an issue with the Public Liability Insurance Act, so this Environment Protection Act 1986 and the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991. So पुराने जितने भी एक्ट्स बताए थे मैंने, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Cess Act, the Forest Conservation Act, the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, these were all chain of Stockholm Convention जो 1972 में हुआ था. उसके बाद ये जो Environment Protection Act 1986 and the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991 was the effect of Bhopal gas tragedy. So 1984 we had Bhopal gas tragedy. So the government wanted to responsibility to be fixed and a permanent mechanism for the industry to, if they are polluting, then they should pay for whatever pollution they are doing, whatever damage is being done because of them, they should pay for that damage to be whatever has been done. So these two acts were made, the Environment Protection Act 1986 and the Public Liability Insurance Act 1991. All right. Not recently, but in 2002 one more act was passed, which is Biological Diversity Act 2002. इन 7 एक्ट्स में अगर कोई भी चैलेंज करना है, वाटर पोल्यूशन से रिलेटेड, एयर पोल्यूशन से रिलेटेड, फॉरेस्ट से रिलेटेड, या बायोलॉजिकल डाइवर्सिटी से रिलेटेड, या एनवायरमेंट असेसमेंट से रिलेटेड, all these matters will go to National Green Tribunal. लेकिन अगर रिहेबिलिटेशन का मैटर है, इट विल नॉट गो टू नेशनल ग्रीन ट्राइब्यूनल, इट विल गो टू द लैंड एक्विजिशन रिहेबिलिटेशन एंड सेटलमेंट अथॉरिटी और द रेवेन्यू कोर्ट्स. ऑल राइट, सो नाउ वी अंडरस्टैंड विच मैटर्स विल गो टू नेशनल ग्रीन ट्राइब्यूनल. लेकिन हितेंद्र जी को इशू है. हितेंद्र जी का इशू ये है कि सर एनवायरमेंटल लॉ का मतलब क्या है. इट इज वेरी वेल दैट वी अंडरस्टैंड कि what matters will go to national green tribunal. लेकिन पर what is the meaning of environmental law? Environmental law developed in India after 1972, after Stockholm Convention, because of intervention of the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. But then the Supreme Court, in 5 judgments, consolidated the environmental law. अब आप ये 5 judgments से एकदम clear, जब भी environmental law की बात होगी, तब आप 5 टेस्ट या 5 principles लिख लीजिए, and the entire environmental law you will understand. So first principle was given in 1985 by the Supreme Court in the case of rural litigation and entitlement gain versus state of UP. इसको बोलते हैं देहरादून मसूरी हिल स्क्वेयरिंग केस. Okay, so there was squaring in hills of Mussoorie, Dehradun, and that matter came before the Honorable Supreme Court. So पहला टेस्ट environmental law का Supreme Court ने दिया, उसको बोलते हैं test of sustainable development. If sustainable development is not happening, if that test is not satisfied, do not do that activity. So environmental law का पहला टेस्ट है. या वीरेश जी, can you unmute yourself? वीरेश जी अपने आप को अनम्यूट करिए भाई. ऑल राइट, सो 5. अब क्वेश्चन ये था कि भाई हितेंद्र जी का क्वेश्चन ये था कि सर व्हाट इज एनवायरमेंटल लॉ. सो एनवायरमेंट लॉ इन इंडिया इज नथिंग बट 5 प्रिंसिपल्स, एक्चुअली 5 डॉक्ट्रिन्स, 5 प्रिंसिपल्स, 5 टेस्ट, आप जो भी बोलना चाहते हैं, विच सुप्रीम कोर्ट हैज गिवन. सो फर्स्ट टेस्ट और डॉक्ट्रिन द सुप्रीम कोर्ट हैज गिवन इज टेस्ट ऑफ सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट. if test of sustainable development is not passed, you can go to the authority NGT. और एनजीटी में जो डिसीजन देती है मैक्सिमम, ये सिर्फ 5 प्रिंसिपल्स पे देती है. आप इन 5 प्रिंसिपल्स को उठा लीजिए और जितने भी एनजीटी के डिसीजन देख लीजिए, वो सारे डिसीजन ये 5 प्रिंसिपल्स पे ही बेस्ड है. So first principle is test of sustainable development. Whether this activity, this mining, this industrial action will lead to sustainable development. Test of sustainable development. वो दिया था rural litigation versus and entitlement gain versus state of UP के judgment में 1985. Second judgment was in 1996, which is called Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum versus Union of India. It is also called Tamil Nadu tanneries case. इसमें 1996 में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ पॉल्यूटर पेस प्रिंसिपल. मैंने कभी 4-5 व्हाट्सएप भेजे हैं, ये सारे प्रिंसिपल्स के व्हाट्सएप भेजे हैं जो एनवायरमेंटल लॉ के प्रिंसिपल्स हैं, व्हिच आर एप्लीकेबल टू द पावर सेक्टर. एंड जनरली इट इज एप्लीकेबल टू पावर सेक्टर, इट इज थर्मल पावर प्लांट एंड हाइड्रो पावर प्लांट, बट इट इज इक्वली एप्लीकेबल फॉर सोलर पावर प्लांट्स आल्सो. आई विल टेल यू हाउ इट इज एप्लीकेबल. सो सेकंड प्रिंसिपल जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दिया वेल्लोर सिटीजन वेलफेयर फोरम में, वो है पॉल्यूटर पेस प्रिंसिपल. सो हूएवर इज पॉल्यूटिंग ही हैज टू पे. सो इफ योर कार इज पॉल्यूटिंग, इट हैज टू पे. If the industry or thermal power plant is polluting, it has to pay. The payment mechanism may be different. It can be RPO, renewable purchase obligation. It can be renewable energy certificates. It can be carbon cess. It can be anything, any form. But the principle is that polluter pays principle. So second principle you get. Third principle was given by the Honorable Supreme Court in 1997 in the case of MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath. MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath में Supreme Court ने बोला, and it enunciated the doctrine of public trust. अब doctrine of public trust means certain resources like air, water, forest, sea have such a great importance to the people that it is unjustified to make them subject of private property. Once again, I repeat, certain resources like air, water, sea, forest have such a great importance to the people that it is unjustified to make them subject of public property, private property. So the Supreme Court in Doctrine of Public Trust says that it cannot be outsourced to a private person. एक river आप एक private party को नहीं दे सकते. एक समुद्र, sea, you cannot give it to private party. So एक forest, you cannot give it to the private. It is public trust. It has to be with the government always, actually. So this is the third principle. Fourth and fifth principle were given by Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court in 1999. दो cases थे. One case was Andhra Pradesh Pollution Control Board versus MV Naidu. In that, the Supreme Court gave the principle of precautionary principle. So जो first WhatsApp message मैंने भेजा था, जो precautionary principle का WhatsApp message था. So if some industrial innovation is happening, and the person says this is a new innovation, that person has to prove that it will not cause harm to the environment. This is precautionary principle. So if you are implementing a new thing, the person has to prove that this new technology, this new innovation will not harm the environment. It is called precautionary principle. Next, 1999 there was another case which is called S. Jagannath versus Union of India, wherein the Supreme Court gave the fifth principle. And the fifth principle was payment of compensation for ecological loss. This is similar to polluter pays principle, but the aspect is different. In polluter pays principle, you are injecting something to the environment. In case of payment of compensation for ecological loss, you are removing something from the environment. So ecological loss can happen by, by cutting a tree, deforestation. It can happen by mining. Pollution, on the other hand, can happen by maybe polluted air or polluted water or waste. So these principles can be read together, but they are different aspects. So in 5 doctrines or 5 principles, you can understand India's environmental law. All the judgments of the National Green Tribunals are based on these 5 principles. First is test of sustainable development. Second is polluter pays principle. Third is doctrine of public trust. Fourth is precautionary principle. And fifth is payment of compensation for ecological loss. Okay, wonderful. So now we have understood what are the principles of environmental law. So first we understood kya history of environmental law, how it came about in India. Secondly, if somebody says what is environmental law, you see these 5 things we have to take care as a power sector entity, and we are done. All right. But Pranali ji ko ek aur issue hai. वो बोलते हैं, sir, can you give examples of some judgments of courts with respect to power sector? What is the court's thinking with respect to hydropower or solar power or transmission or thermal power? That's a wonderful thing. So let us start with hydropower plant. We have seen that in Narmada Valley, there were a lot of hydropower plants which had to be developed from almost before independence, 1947, 48, 50s, 60s. Unfortunately, because of several reasons, and it was a World Bank funded project. For several reasons, those power plants, those hydroelectricity plants did not come up. It took them around 40, 50 years to build those hydropower plants. One case before Supreme Court was with respect to Narmada Bachao Andolan versus Union of India. So hydroelectricity power plant was there, and there was a dispute, and local tribals and with some NGOs were fighting to stall the hydroelectricity power plant. In fact, they went to the extent to go to the World Bank and convince the World Bank not to fund this project. And unfortunately, the World Bank also withdrew the funding to this project. However, that project was completed, and it was a prolonged litigation in the courts. This finally came before the Honorable Supreme Court, and the judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court in year 2000, which is called Narmada Bachao Andolan versus Union of India 2000. It will be a surprise for all of you what the Supreme Court says. Supreme Court ने सरदार सरोवर डैम के बारे में क्या कहा? In fact, not सरदार सरोवर, hydroelectricity projects के बारे में generally क्या कहा? Number 1, Supreme Court said, construction of dam would lead to ecological upgradation. So if hydroelectricity power plant is built somewhere, it leads to ecological. हमारा मानना है, whatever we have been told by press sometimes, we think that this is disadvantage. Hydroelectricity power plants are disadvantageous for environment or something. But after a lot of analysis, after a lot of reports, after prolonged litigation, Supreme Court came to the conclusion that construction of dam would lead to ecological upgradation. और आप ये example देख सकते हैं, जो मध्य प्रदेश में आज की तारीख में मध्य प्रदेश में ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन चल रहा है. वो ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन क्यों चल रहा है? बिकॉज ऑफ ओमकारेश्वर हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पावर प्लांट एंड ड्यू टू सरदार सरोवर, दूसरा अपना है इंदिरा सागर हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पावर प्लांट. Once a hydroelectricity power plant या dam is built, it has all round positive impact. Number 1, afforestation across डैम के 50 किलोमीटर में 100 किलोमीटर में ऑटोमेटिकली एफॉरेस्टेशन हो जाएगा, बिकॉज द मॉइस्चर कंटेंट ऑफ द एरिया विल इंक्रीज. नंबर 1. नंबर 2, वाटर लेवल, ग्राउंड वाटर लेवल विल ऑटोमेटिकली राइज. नो अदर, आई एम नॉट सेइंग दैट इरिगेशन बनाएंगे तब राइज करेगा, नहीं भी बनाएंगे तब भी राइज करेगा. फ्लोरा फौना विल इंप्रूव considerably actually, and whatever agriculture produce or what is being produced there, 20% automatically the protection will improve. So we are having a green revolution, just like what we had green revolution in Punjab and Haryana in 1960s. Today, at the time when I am speaking, they are having a green revolution in the state of Madhya Pradesh. It is producing more grains than all the states. Okay. Second thing which the Supreme Court said is that hydropower will save air pollution. So if you produce electricity from other means, hydropower it is a green source. Third thing the Supreme Court said, ये जितने मैंने 5 प्रिंसिपल्स दिए हैं, आप ये देखो, इसकी कंपेयर करो. It says hydropower plants are example of sustainable development. So if you see all the principles, test of sustainable development complete हो गया. Polluter pays principle में ये कह दिया कि hydropower will save air pollution. If you see precautionary principle, वो भी complete हो जाएगा. Payment of compensation for ecological loss नहीं बनता, क्योंकि वो सबसे पहले सुप्रीम कोर्ट ये बोलता है construction of dam will lead to ecological upgradation. फिर उसके बाद doctrine of public trust. तो every principle of environmental law was tested in this case. And this is the outcome of this case. So hydroelectricity power plants are very positive for the nation, for everyone actually. और वो वैसे एनर्जी स्टोरेज के लिए बनाए जाए या फिर पावर जनरेशन के लिए, whatever may be the purpose of those hydroelectricity power plant या dams. Let us come. अब क्वेश्चन ये होगा, भाई अजय रामदेव जी सर ये पूछेंगे, सर कुछ थर्मल, is there any landmark judgment with respect to thermal power plant? So there is a landmark judgment. So thermal power plant का जो केस था, there were in fact 2 cases. One was the बनवासी सेवा आश्रम वर्सेस स्टेट ऑफ यूपी एंड अदर्स, 1986 का मैटर है, और दूसरा जन जागृति समिति वर्सेस यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया, 1991 का मैटर है, कर्नाटका से आया था हाईकोर्ट से. ओके. अब इसमें इशू ये था कि व्हेन थर्मल पावर प्लांट इज कंस्ट्रक्टेड, सो अगर फॉरेस्ट एरिया एक्वायर होता है, देन व्हाट हैपेंस, वेदर इट इज अलाउड टू डू दैट. दूसरा, व्हाट अबाउट द राइट टू लाइवलीहुड ऑफ ट्राइबल पीपल व्हेन acquisition of land is done for National Thermal Power Corporation or Thermal Power Corporation generally. So Supreme Court in this judgment, these 2 cases judgment said, number 1, permitted NTPC to acquire forest land for power project. Firstly. Second is, the Supreme Court said fundamental right of livelihood is not infringed of tribals due to relocation. Third, the Supreme Court said is that development and environment to be dealt in harmonious manner, both are equally important. So this was the judgment of the Supreme Court with respect to thermal power, especially National Thermal Power Corporation was the entity which was contesting the matter. Let us come to Abhishek Yadav ji ka hai ki sir, solar, what is the view of the court with respect to solar? So solar power plants are new development. It is maybe 1 decade or 1.5 decades ka development है solar power plant का. अब solar power plant में one of the benefits, encouragement given to the solar plant was through renewable purchase obligation, RPO. So all the DISCOMs have to abide by this minimum requirement of renewable purchase obligation. So solar से इतना लेना है और बाकी renewable sources से इतना power लेना compulsory था. So DISCOMs के लिए तो ये compulsory था. And because of this compulsion, and what happened, some states said, sir, itna to renewable power generate nahi kar sakte. So Delhi said, we are a city state. We cannot generate so much of renewable power. हमारे पास rivers नहीं है जिसमें hydroelectricity power plant बन सके. ना तो हमारे पास इतना land mass है जहाँ पे हम लोग whatever is the requirement of Delhi, power generate कर सके. So that was a challenge. So a new scheme was launched, and that is called renewable purchase obligation. So you have to comply with renewable energy obligations, RPO. Okay. However, in case the state is not able to produce that much of or utilize that much of renewable energy, it can go in for REC, renewable energy certificates. राजस्थान गवर्नमेंट ने 2 रेगुलेशंस बनाए इन दोनों एस्पेक्ट्स को इंप्लीमेंट करने के लिए. एक एस्पेक्ट था राजस्थान RERC, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी ऑब्लिगेशन रेगुलेशन 2007. दूसरा रेगुलेशन था RERC, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी सर्टिफिकेट्स एंड रिन्यूएबल परचेज ऑब्लिगेशन कंप्लायंस फ्रेमवर्क रेगुलेशन 2010. ये दोनों बनाए गए. हिंदुस्तान जिंक वाज अ कंपनी इन राजस्थान व्हिच सेड that renewable purchase obligation is not applicable to my captive power plant. जो मेरा thermal captive power plant है या coal based captive power plant है, उसमें renewable purchase obligation applicable नहीं है और इसीलिए मुझे renewable energy certificates भी खरीदने की जरूरत नहीं है. This was the view of Hindustan Zinc Limited. So a case came up before the division bench of the Honorable Supreme Court, which is called Hindustan Zinc Limited versus Rajasthan Electricity Regulatory Commission 2015 में division bench of the Supreme Court. And the question before the Honorable Supreme Court was that if there is a thermal captive power plant adjacent to a company, in this case it was Hindustan Zinc Limited, but it has wider implications. So बालकू का भी जो captive power plant है वो thermal captive power plant है. और दूसरा चीज है, if somebody takes power through open access, so if somebody is an open access consumer, in those cases is renewable purchase obligation applicable or not? That was the question before the Honorable Supreme Court. After examining the matter, the Honorable Supreme Court said that renewable energy obligation is protection of environment and preventing pollution by utilizing renewable energy sources. Hence, it has to be given wider meaning. And open access consumers taking power from thermal sources, or if you have a captive power plant which is of thermal origin, मतलब इन दोनों consumers के लिए, captive power consumers के लिए और open access consumers के लिए, दोनों consumers के लिए renewable purchase obligation is applicable. So if there is a 10% renewable RPO है, तो आप अगर 100 megawatts thermal से ले रहे हैं तो आपको 10 megawatts solar से लेना पड़ेगा. This is the law of the land. And it has been clarified in the case of Hindustan Zinc Limited versus Rajasthan Electricity Regulatory Commission. All right. Let us discuss transmission also. So with respect to transmission, there was a very interesting case, and it is a very recent case. And this case is called M.K. Ranjit Singh and others versus Union of India and others. So full bench of the Supreme Court, that means 3-judge bench has decided this matter. इसमें वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट भी डिस्कस हुआ है, एनवायरमेंट जितने भी मैंने बताए हैं स्टॉकहोम कन्वेंशन के एक्ट, वो सारे एक्ट्स इस केस में लगाए गए. इसमें यहाँ पे इशू ये था कि इन राजस्थान, इन द एरिया ऑफ जैसलमेर, बीकानेर एंड सर्टेन एरियाज ऑफ कच्छ इन गुजरात हैड अ बर्ड स्पीशी व्हिच इज कॉल्ड GIB, ग्रेट इंडियन बस्टर्ड. दूसरी बर्ड स्पीशी है, उसको बोलते हैं फ्लोरिकन. These and great Indian bustard is the state bird of Rajasthan also. This is one of the heaviest flying bird in the world. And उसकी जो उसके पंख हैं वो इतने लंबे होते हैं कि when it takes off for flying, and every year 30 to 40 birds were electrocuted because of the wires which were evacuating power from solar power plants. So this was brought before the Honorable Supreme Court, and it was said that 30 to 40 birds are dying, and these are very large birds. They are endangered birds. They are also a state bird of the Rajasthan. And second bird was Floricon. तो ये दोनों birds endangered bird है, and these are the two areas. One is Bikaner Jaisalmer area and Kutch area where these birds are dying because of electrocution. क्योंकि दोनों उनके जो दोनों पंख हैं वो टकरा जाते हैं उसमें wires पे. So the Supreme Court in the case it constituted a full bench. Full bench का मतलब है 3-judge bench. So on Supreme Court में अगर एक जज अकेला बैठता है, then it is called chamber judge. When 2 judges sit together, it is called division bench. If 3 judges are sitting together and deciding a matter, it is called full bench. If 5 judges are sitting together and deciding the matter, it is called constitutional bench. So there is a division of power, within these benches. So if there is a small matter, for example, transfer of case from one state to another state, in that case, it is chamber judge. Single judge sits and decides the matter. In normal cases, most of the matter, it is a division bench. There is a writ petition or appeal or criminal appeal, civil appeal. Those appeals are decided by division bench. 2 judges sitting together and deciding the matter. In case some act or law is challenged, a state act is challenged or law is challenged, it is important matter. In that case, full bench sits and they interpret the law of the state or central laws. In case interpretation of the constitution is involved or constitutional challenge is there, in case 5-judge bench sit and decide the matter. In this case, full bench decided the matter. And in this case, the Supreme Court held that it directed, after examining all the environmental law जो अभी मैंने डिस्कस करे, 7 environmental law और वाइल्ड लाइफ प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट, स्टॉकहोम कन्वेंशन भी डिस्कस हुआ इसमें, इंटरनेशनल जो कन्वेंशन थे वो सारे डिस्कस हुए इसमें. तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला कि टू प्रोटेक्ट द वाइल्ड लाइफ एंड ये जो सारे प्रिंसिपल्स हैं, ये प्रिंसिपल्स जिस तरह से ये सारे प्रिंसिपल्स लगा करके सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला डैम इज द बेस्ट थिंग इन द वर्ल्ड. Similarly, ये सारे प्रिंसिपल प्रिकॉशनरी प्रिंसिपल लगा के सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला प्लीज कन्वर्ट ऑल द ओवरहेड पावर लाइंस टू अंडरग्राउंड पावर लाइंस विद इन 1 year.